Yo, what is up everybody, it's Joe the Great here, and welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today we have a video that a few of you guys recommended, so thanks to you guys for that. And as you can tell by the title, this is What If Shino Went on the Sasuke Retrieval Mission by Dygoknight. So folks, that's actually a very interesting question, and also a very interesting topic to try and analyze and conclude on, right? Shino had some pretty impressive performances within the Chunin exam arc and the Konoha Crush arc. We saw him deal with a Sound Ninja during the preliminary rounds, deal with him in a very impressive fashion with his beetles, and then we see him stalemate and arguably defeat Kankuro, who was also heralded as a very impressive shinobi for his age as well, right? So because of those empirical pieces of evidence, it is quite interesting to try and analyze how Shino would have done against the Sound 4 and how the mission would have been different if Shino were present, right? What we do know as far as pass skill, and before we get into this video, Shino's last empirical feat was, like I said, his stalemating against Kankuro. Arguably he won. Kankuro went down first, i.e. Shino got the narrow victory, but you can also argue that's a stalemate because Shino was exhausted and depleted after that fight as well. Right, so if we take that empirical piece of evidence into consideration and try to power scale and estimate where his power would be at during the Sasuke Retrieval arc, it would certainly be higher. You can make the argument that he'd be around Kankuro's level. Kankuro did save Kiba from being killed by Sakon and Yukon, and Sakon and Yukon is stated to be the strongest of the Sound 4, right? So if you presuppose that his rate of growth from that point to the Sasuke Retrieval arc is equivalent to that of Kankuro, then he would be a very problematic shinobi for the Sound 4 to face. But however, there's no way to conclude whether that's the case or not, and I'm very intrigued to see what Dygoknight has to say about this one. But before we begin, and let's really appreciate it, hit that like button, turn on bell notifications to stay updated with yours truly, and if you enjoy, man, you mess with the kid, make sure to hit that sub button, because once you do, you become part of the family forever. But let's not waste any more time, screen. Let's see what Dygoknight says about this one.
The Sasuke Retrieval arc is one of the best arcs in the Naruto series. It shows 5 Konoha ninjas trying to rescue Sasuke after he left the village with the Sound 4. But there is a member of the Konoha 11 that always resented them for not taking him in this mission, and that will be Shino. In Naruto Shippuden, Shino's always sulky about, well, you didn't take me last time, right? You guys just kind of abandoned me here. And when they go after Sasuke in Naruto Shippuden in the Itachi Pursuit arc, Shino's always saying that to Naruto and to the others. But of course, this was because, well, Kishimoto had to choose a certain number of characters. He couldn't just throw every single side character into this arc, otherwise it wouldn't really make sense. And even still, most of the Konoha 11 members got something to do in this arc. Even Sakura had a participation trying to bring Sasuke back before he even leaves the village. The only ones who do not participate are Shino, Tenten, and Ino. Lee shows up later, but he does show up. We had the 5 main guys in the rescue squad, and we also get the Sand siblings. So, well, Shino kinda got the short end of the stick here, and it's justified in universe that Shino was actually in a mission with his dad. And if you think about it, Shino's dad is a Jonin member and the leader of the Aburame clan, one of the renowned clans of the Leaf Village, and Shino was in a mission with the guy. So this means that Shino was in a very high level in terms of strength and of being a ninja in that part of the story. So what would happen if Shino actually went with a squad during the mission? Now, I see 2 ways of doing this what if. The first one would be what if he just replaces Kiba, which was the member from his team that went in the mission, and the other way would be to just add him into the team and just make it a 6-man team. And we can do both ways. But first, I want to talk about how Shino would fare against each Sound 4 member individually, because this will make things easier as we go along. Starting off with Jirobo, and Shino wouldn't really have much trouble against Jirobo. I mean, Choji was by far the weakest member of the rescue team. Sure, he had to cheat a lot to win the fight, eating those pills and getting 100 times stronger than his base. But Jirobo was definitely the stupidest fighter in the Sound 4, and his powers wouldn't really do very well against Shino. First, because Shino is very strategic during his fights. The two big fights he gets in the Naruto series against Haku and then against Kankuro, Shino depicts a level of strategy that we only saw with Shikamaru.
Alright, so before we continue further, I do want to refute the point that Dygoknight made when he said that Jirobo by far was the weakest individual in the Sound 4. I disagree, and here's why. As we all know, the Sound 4 were all fatigued, and all had to go to CS2 to deal with two mid-tier Jonin that just came back from a mission, implying those two Jonin were fatigued to some arbitrary extent as well, right? So if Jirobo was by far the weakest, it wouldn't make logical sense why all the Sound 4 were fatigued after dealing with these mid-tier Jonin where they all had to resort to CS2, right? So the word by far is a strong word, and I think it's a misclassification of where Jirobo really scales. I believe there is a hierarchy within the Sound 4, and Jirobo is sort of implied to be the weakest. That I do agree with. However, I think the discrepancy in power between each Sound 4 member isn't as large as Dygoknight seems to be implying. It's quite close, and the feat I just referenced sort of reinforces that notion. Right? We got Sakana and Yukon at the top, and probably Taiyuyo, Kidomaru after, and then Jirobo. But the discrepancy between each is not as vast as Dygoknight seems to be painting it to be. I just wanted to add that in before we continue.
In part 1. He can also handle his own in taijutsu and speed, so he could pretty much dodge everything Jirobo would throw against him, and I don't see Jirobo doing anything against Shino's insects. We see time and time again that whenever Shino's insects actually hit someone when they are swarmed by them, they lose the fight pretty much immediately. When that happened to Kankuro, he lost the fight. When that happened to Zaku, he lost the fight. Well, Zaku kind of blew his arms apart before that happened, but still, he was afraid the insects would get to him. So this is essentially the win condition for Shino. Can he make the insects hit the enemy? If so, he wins. And Jirobo would not be able to avoid the insects for too long. Even in Curse Mark 2, he's not the fastest guy out there. Sure, he is strong, but Shino is a long-range fighter first and foremost, and Jirobo can throw very big rocks. This is one of his specialities, but Shino can get out of the way of those. He can also fly on an insect cloud to get out of his range. Now let's get to Kidomaru, and this is much more interesting. First, because it would be cool to see the spider guy versus the bugs guy, just this thematic insect fight. But Kidomaru is a much more difficult opponent. In my opinion, he is the strongest member of the Sound 4. Now, Kabuto says Sakon is, but I'm gonna get to Sakon later. Kidomaru has long-ranged attacks first and foremost as well. He can produce arrows in Curse Mark 2 and other kinds of throwing weapons without the Curse Mark 2 to throw against his opponents using those gland fluids of his that harden whenever it leaves his body. And then he can also use that fluid to create a case around his skin to protect himself against blows. And that casing was able to tank a 64 palm Gentle Fist attack from Neji. Pretty impressive, to be fair. Then again, Shino's strategy would be completely different because he has means to hit opponents from very far away. As a matter of fact, Shino doesn't even have to see where the opponent is. As long as the insects can detect Kidomaru, then he's good. And I see Shino being far, far superior to Kidomaru in terms of strategy, even though Kidomaru is no slouch. So this fight would be decided by whether or not Shino could come up with an interesting and good plan to catch Kidomaru off guard. The problem for Shino is that Kidomaru's arsenal hits very hard, much harder than his own arsenal, but I can still see Shino using clones such as the insect clone that he used against Kankuro to dodge those very powerful attacks, and also using his own insects to counter the small spiders that Kidomaru used to swarm Neji. We then get Taiyuya, and Shino's got this one, because first and foremost, Taiyuya used her summons a lot, and those summons, they could create those weird-looking ghosts that drain chakra, but then again, Shino's insects also drain chakra, and the summons are massive, and the insects would have no problem swarming them and draining their chakra. Shino could stay out of range and create strategies just like Shikamaru was. Granted, his strategies wouldn't be as good as Shikamaru's, but still, his insects are more versatile than Shikamaru's shadow. And also, whenever Taiyuya uses her flute genjutsu, Shino could easily break himself out just by using his insects, and the insects could break him out of the genjutsu. But then again, I see Shino winning more times against Ayuya than otherwise. And then we get Sakon, and Shino absolutely stomps Sakon. What will Sakon do against Shino's insects? Is he going to summon the Rashomon? It's not gonna work, man. Is he going to split his body into two? Sure, man, go for it, but Sakon is very much a close-ranged fighter. Shino is definitely going to keep his distance and use his insects to his advantage. Sakon's not gonna have any chance. Kankuro absolutely negative diffed Sakon and Ukon, and Shino beat Kankuro in the tuning exams, meaning, yeah, there's absolutely no chance here. Even if Sakon manages to catch Shino in the jutsu, he kinda fuses himself with the enemy's body. It wouldn't really work, because if Kiba can come up with a counter for that, you know, using the kunai against himself, Shino would definitely do the same thing because he's much smarter than Kiba, or maybe he could come up with a better counter, such as using the insects that literally live inside of his body to attack Sakon's cells within his body. That could be pretty interesting. And then let's talk a little bit about Kimimaro. Of course, Kimimaro is by far the strongest member of the Sound 5, if you want to call him that way. And Shino doesn't really win here. Now, granted, Shino is probably not the best opponent for Kimimaro as well. First, because Kimimaro not slow, but he's not a speedster either. Base Kimimaro was very much relative in speed to base Rock Lee, and a base Rock Lee that was fresh out of surgery. He wasn't able to outright dodge Rock Lee's attack with the first gate, but he managed to block it, so there's that. But the insects, well, blocking them will not work. And if Shino manages to hit Kimimaro with a swarm of insects, then you can use the Curse Mark level 2, but you're just gonna get drained quickly, especially someone like Kimimaro that has ninja disease and is not in a terribly good condition when you just speak about physicality. So I see Kimimaro winning most of the encounters here, but if there's one person in the entire Konoha 12 that can actually beat this Kimimaro, except for like Curse Mark 2 Sasuke and Gaara, even though he kind of lost the fight, he just outlasted Kimimaro, and then perhaps Naruto with the QB Chakra Cloak with one tail, and that's very debatable. These characters are very debatable. The other person that would have a chance against Kimimaro would be Shino, although a slim one, but much better than nothing. So now let's explore the what-if scenarios. The first one being...
Before we get to the what-if, I want to analyze and sort of give my take on the takes Daigo had. Right, so against Jirobo, he does have a good chance. Right, his bugs would be a problem. Jirobo's not very fast, and that's evident by his performance against Choji. Right, Choji did get 100 times amp though to defeat Jirobo in CS2. The 100 times amp most likely refers to his strength alone. I doubt that his speed and things of that nature increased by 100 times. So I would just conclude that it has to do with his strength physical attribute, right, when it comes to the 100-time multiplier. So Shino would do well against Jirobo. And if we presuppose that his rate of growth is similar to Kankuro from the Konoha Crush arc to the Sasuke Retrieval arc, then he would more than likely defeat Jirobo, drain his chakra, etc. Could Jirobo win? Yes. If he uses that dome that he used on the Sasuke Retrieval arc team when they were stuck in the dome, and I believe they were running out of air and things of that nature, I'd be very problematic for him, and he'd most likely die there alone without any help. Right? He probably would die there, and Jirobo would get the best of him there. That is a win con for Jirobo. But if he plays it safe, goes long distance, doesn't give Jirobo the jump on him, then he could most likely drain Jirobo of his chakra. Jirobo's not very intelligent at all, and more than likely, Shino would defeat Jirobo. I do agree with that. Now, when it comes to Kidomaru, I believe Kidomaru would not have too much trouble with Shino. Like Dygoknight pointed out and referenced, Kidomaru can harden his body with this sort of cocoon-like structure, so the beetles wouldn't be able to penetrate his skin more than likely. I haven't seen any sort of AP feats implying that beetles can go through hard surfaces to get to an organism's actual skin, right? So I think that would be extremely problematic for Shino. On top of that, the hard counter to the beetles in question are the spiders that Kidomaru can summon. The webs would catch tons of them. It'd be a very, very tough time, and he's also long range as well. Right? I do think that he's faster than Shino. Right? If Neji has a tough time combating him, Shino would most definitely have a tough time reacting at close quarters to what Kidomaru is capable of. He has his arrows, he has his spiders, and he has enough durability to tank a 64 palms again with the cocoon-like structure that he can produce. Right, so more than likely Kidomaru would defeat Shino in the majority of instances. Shino could hypothetically win. However, I think Kidomaru would deduce what his abilities are and realize, hey, I have a spider-like arsenal. That's a perfect counter to the beetles. I'll catch most of them in webs. I'll cocoon myself in my armor-like structure, and he won't be able to touch me. At that point, this opponent is useless. And more than likely, Kidomaru would dispose of Shino. He's certainly faster than him. If Neji Hyuga, the prodigy of the Hyuga clan, has a tough time combating him at close quarters, Shino would have an extremely tough time and would fail. He would definitely fall to Kidomaru. Now, Taiyuya, that skirmish is interesting. Taiyuya is long distance as well. And the question of could the beetles break Shino out of a genjutsu? Well, it's sort of hard to answer because we never see that, at least to my knowledge. I've never seen Shino in a genjutsu. And the question is, would the beetles fall to the genjutsu as well as Shino commands them? Right? Would they be able to break him out? Are they sentient enough to break Shino out of the genjutsu? If the answer is no, Taiyuya will win. As soon as she gets him in the genjutsu, he's done. Right? But if we presuppose that the beetles are sentient, they have a high enough level of rationalization to deduce that Shino's stuck in a genjutsu and get him out by biting him or something, then maybe he would stand a chance. Hence, this battle is probably the most contentious out of the Sound 4. To me, it can go either way. There are a lot of factors that are sort of inconclusive. How does his speed, AP, etc. compare to Taiyuya? There's that, because if he's not fast enough, regardless of what his arsenal entails of, Taiyuya will simply blitz him. Right? We don't know the differences in speed. It's very difficult to try and conclude that, truly. So, to me, this is a toss-up, and there's an argument for both sides, to be quite honest. It all depends on what you presuppose that the discrepancies in speed are, in AP, and durability, and intelligence, etc. Right? It all comes down to that, and that one's extremely contentious due to the lack of empirical evidence. Now we get to Sakon and Yukon. Daigo actually made a good point in saying that Sakon and Yukon are a close combatant type of opponent, and that's correct, right? However, if we presuppose that Kabuto was correct in his assessment and said that Sakon and Yukon are the most powerful of the Sound 4, then that allows me to conclude to some safe degree that Sakon and Yukon have pretty high physical attribute stats, such as speed, AP, etc. Right? Obviously, arsenals matter, greatly matters, but if we presuppose that Sakon and Yukon are the fastest of the Sound 4, and even faster than Kidomaru, who gave Neji, the prodigy of the Hyuga clan, a tough time in close combat, then Sakon and Yukon would blitz Shino. Right? That's if we presuppose that. There's no way to conclude the discrepancy in speed between each of the Sound 4 members. But if we presuppose that based off Kabuto's statement, then Sakon and Yukon would defeat Shino. But however, again, if the discrepancy in speed between Shino and Sakon and Yukon is minimal, or even better yet, Shino has the advantage in speed, then simply put, Shino would best Sakon and Yukon, most likely soak the chakra out of them with the beetles, utilize his beetle arsenal to dispose of them, etc. Right, so it all depends on when you presuppose there. And finally, there's the Kimimaro fight, and honestly, Shino would stand no chance. Dygoknight sort of misrepresented how the Lee and Kidomaru fight went. He had a tough time against Drunk Lee. Drunk Lee was so capable that Might Guy had to actually put in effort to some arbitrary extent to sedate him, right? That's how powerful Drunk Lee is and how capable he is with his taijutsu. So it's not simply just Rock Lee fresh out of surgery. It's a Drunk Lee. There's a clear amp in his physical attributes when he is under the influence. We saw it clear as day. Might Guy even references him as a huge problem. Even Neji had a problem with him. Everyone did. Might Guy had to intervene. Shino would stand no chance against Kidomaru. On top of that, he can harden his body. I'm sure that the beetles wouldn't even be able to penetrate his skin, right? And he could even hypothetically cause spikes to come out every time the beetles get near, sort of deterring them away from his body. So it would be tough to even siphon chakra out of his chakra network. That would be difficult because of the bone arsenal that Kidomaru possesses. He's most definitely faster than Shino, most definitely better in taijutsu, and most definitely the superior in a close combat setting. All right, it's going to be a huge problem for Shino. Kidomaru will blitz him, and Kidomaru will kill him very quickly. I honestly think that he would speed blitz him quite significantly. He is significantly superior to the Sound 4 even while ill. He literally tells all 4 of them casually that he could eliminate them if he feels like it. And they all acknowledge that. No one challenges that. They're all like, oh, wow, we better listen to this guy. He's going to kill all of us. He's simply significantly superior. He would win basically every instance. Unless he is completely out of it one day and is toying with Shino to such an extent that he doesn't even utilize his bones and then he gets his chakra siphoned. Maybe then. But that's a very, very unlikely scenario. The probability of Shino defeating Kidomaru is statistically insignificant. But with all that said, let's continue on.
The easiest one, which Shino replaces Kiba. Kiba was not terribly impactful before his fight against Sakon. He's the one that kind of does the least there. Choji at least broke them out of Jirobu's barrier. Neji managed to track them with his Byakugan. Naruto was using the Shadow Clones when they encountered the group to fight, in those group fights. And of course, Shikamaru was leading the team. Now, granted, Kiba was also tracking them with his smell, but Shino could probably do the same with his insects, just using them as scouts going ahead. Now, maybe you could argue that the first time they catch up to them with Shino there, things would be different, and they wouldn't be caught by Jirobu's barrier, or even later when they just encountered Taiyuya and Sakon, if Shino was there, they could have beaten them before Kimimaru arrives and takes Sasuke away, meaning that they would succeed in the mission, but I don't think this would happen. Yes, Shino is powerful, but those team fights, they were kind of evenly matched, and even if Shino is more powerful, the Sound 4 can probably hold their own a little bit more. If Shino was there in the place of Kiba, he would just fight Sakon instead of Kiba. Of course, as I mentioned before, he would beat Sakon, and then he would probably rush towards Naruto's position. But then again, if Kankuro, Kiba, Temari, Shikamaru, and even Lee and Gaara didn't go to the Valley of the End. They didn't go after Sasuke and Naruto after their fights were won. I don't see Shino doing the same, perhaps because they wouldn't be able to track them very well, because they were just way too far, or because he would be out of chakra. Now, he probably wouldn't even be out of chakra, and Kankuro would just arrive there and Shino would have won the fight already, and it would be kind of anticlimactic. For Kankuro, he would just see the guy that beat him in the forest in the Leaf Village, and, oh, okay, you beat the guy. Cool, what do we do now? They could try and go after Naruto, but I don't think they would catch up to him in time if Kakashi wasn't able to do so. Now, granted, Kakashi had to leave from the Leaf Village itself, which was much further away, and you can maybe say that Kankuro and Kiba didn't go after Sasuke after their fight in the original because Kiba was pretty hurt and Kankuro had to take care of him, but Temari and Shikamaru, they were in pretty good condition, especially Temari. I mean, Shikamaru had a broken finger and low chakra, but he was fine, all things considered, so in this scenario, I don't really see a lot of things changing, unless Shino and Kankuro manage to catch up to Naruto fighting Sasuke, and then, with a 3-on-1, Sasuke will have a pretty difficult time, because Shino and Kankuro are actually pretty powerful. Of course, not as powerful as Sasuke was in that point, they would never win a 1-on-1, but with Naruto helping them 3 versus 1 in the Valley of the End, they would lose, but I don't really see this happening. Shino being there instead of Kiba wouldn't do much to affect the story, it would just be a different character, and granted, I think Shino is cooler than Kiba, but the Kiba moment in that arc was pretty cool too. The two-headed hound was an interesting addition to his arsenal, and he got some pretty good moments in the fight against Sakon. So now let's talk about what if Shino went with the other 5 in a 6-man team? Okay. This would definitely change things, because now they have an extra man to spare in one of those fights. Maybe Shino's going to tip the scales, huh? Now, out of the Sound 4 fights that we got, 2 of them were very much optional. They were chosen by the 5 guys that were rescuing Sasuke. Choji asked everyone to fight against Jirobo, and Neji said, I will fight against Kidomaru because my jutsu is effective against his webs. And I don't really see things going differently here. I think they would still want to fight those battles one-on-one for the specific reasons. Choji because essentially Jirobo insulted Shikamaru and called him fat, and Neji because of the powers that they had and his power worked against Kidomaru. But this means that when they catch up to Tayuya and Sakon taking Sasuke again, in this situation, it would be a 4 versus 2. And now there's a very high possibility that they will be able to defeat Tayuya and Sakon before Kimimaro arrives to take Sasuke away. If Shino can defeat Sakon by himself, as we've established, then if he's in a team with 3 more members that are pretty powerful against him and Tayuya, Sakon and Tayuya, they just lose here. Kiba and Shino will have good teamwork because they were in the same team for a while, and Shikamaru is pretty intelligent. He would be able to use Shino's powers with effective tactics and eventually corner and grab Sasuke back. Now, Tayuya and Sakon wouldn't really be killed in this fight. Even in the original, Naruto was able to grab the gourd Sasuke was being kept on for a brief moment, and then Kimimaro arrived and ruined everything. But in this situation, with Shino helping them, I see them doing it before, and running away from the 2 Sound 4 members. But of course, Kimimaro would show up, and he would say, if you guys don't get Sasuke, I'm gonna kill you, to Sakon and Tayuya. They would be very scared, and then the 3 of them would pursue Shino, Shikamaru, Naruto, and Kiba back, from where they came from. And eventually this team fight would also break out. 3 versus 4 now, but Kimimaro makes up for the difference, that's for sure. With his help, Tayuya and Sakon would be able to press their advantage and eventually corner the 4 members of the Leaf Village. But then Rock Lee would show up. Because you remember when Kimimaro was fighting against Naruto, Rock Lee shows up and says, Naruto, you go ahead, go grab Sasuke. And this will happen more or less the same time Sasuke wakes up and goes away. So, Sasuke would leave, and that would be Kimimaro, Tayuya, Sakon versus Rock Lee, Shino, Shikamaru, Naruto, and Kiba. One of them would have to go after Sasuke, and it would obviously be Naruto. So the other Leaf Ninjas would try to buy Naruto enough time to get past the enemies and go after Sasuke, and they would probably succeed at doing so. Shikamaru would come up with something clever. Naruto will go after Sasuke, and they will eventually end up in the Valley of the End while this team fight is happening. And the Leaf would lose here. Without Naruto's help, it's a 3 against 4, and now granted, Rock Lee is back. He's not at his full strength, and Kimimaro is pretty powerful. They would begin to lose, but remember what happens next. The Sound siblings show up. They would show up here, and then it would all of a sudden be a 7 against 3. And we know that Temari and Kankuro absolutely stomped Tayuya and Sakon. So they would be crushed, and then Gaara showing up. Well, he was pretty evenly matched against Kimimaro, but now he would have help from an army of other ninjas. So Kimimaro would get very much overwhelmed and dealt with quicker. Now, there's a possibility one of the members of the Leaf Village, or maybe one of the Sound siblings, except for Gaara, would die in this situation because Kimimaro's jutsu is just so dangerous. That forest of bones he uses before he dies is absolutely insane. But I don't even think that would happen because nobody even died in the original, and they were fighting in more difficult circumstances. The bottom line is that Kimimaro would get overwhelmed and beaten. And then, this very large squadron of Temari, Gaara, Kankuro, Shikamaru, Kiba, Rock Lee, and Shino, they would be tired, yes, but they would be able to go after Naruto and Sasuke. And as they are much closer to them than Kakashi was, they would be able to arrive in time in the Valley of the End. And if they show up, then Sasuke, he can't do anything here. It's 8 against 1. If he had to sweat blood in order to beat Naruto, he's not beating the army of the Leaf and Sand Ganons all at once. And then, well, Sasuke would be brought back to the Leaf Village. They would collect Neji and Choji, who almost died in their previous fights, but Sasuke would actually be collected as well, which is a good thing. They succeed in their mission. They will probably encounter Kakashi along the way because he was actually going towards the Valley of the End, chasing them with his dogs, and Kakashi would probably be very proud of Naruto and the others, especially Naruto, because he's the one he actually knows in that group, and berate Sasuke once more. Now, what actually happens after this would completely change the entire story. Sasuke going to Orochimaru is one of the most pivotal moments in the Naruto series, and if that doesn't happen, the rest of the story would just be completely different just because of the butterfly effect. But yeah, adding Shino, one of the most powerful Konoha 12 members, into the rescue squad would actually have made a lot of difference in this scenario, because they would have succeeded in their mission, therefore changing the entire course of the Naruto story. Or maybe something different would have happened. This is what I came up with, what I thought was more likely to happen, but I'm very curious to hear what do you guys think would have happened if Shino went with him, maybe replacing Kiba or just going with him in the 6-man team. Tell me in the comments below. Also, like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to this channel if you like this type of video, and watch this other video right here. All those things really help me
I'm
out
definitely gonna
with
get my
YouTube
thoughts
algorithm,
on
and
the what if scenarios
so
here.
Much for watching.
All right, there you guys have it. I still want to get my thoughts here. So going down these what if scenarios that Dygoknight illustrated. The first one was, what if, simply put, Kiba was replaced with Shino. Right? Shino would certainly have a better chance at defeating Sasuke and Yukon. I went over that earlier. And it would certainly go similar. At best, Shino struggles, and then Kankuro shows up and does what he did in the original storyline. And things would basically go the same way, right? I don't think anything would really change in that case. I think everything will go pretty much remotely the same. The only difference would be the fight Sakon and Yukon had to face, right? Shino's a different opponent, a superior opponent, I would say, in comparison to Kiba, completely different arsenal, etc. However, I do disagree with Dygoknight on how the second what if would go. So if Shino was simply added to the 5-man team, making it a 6-man team, and we presuppose, like Daigo did, that Naruto was successful in taking the gorge that had Sasuke. In this scenario, unlike the original one, what would happen is they would try to run away, right? It would be Naruto, Kiba, Shino, Shikamaru running away. And what would take place is Kidomaru would appear, and Kidomaru would slaughter all of them. If we presuppose that the exact time the Sand Genin show up, they wouldn't make it in time, right? Tamari, Kankuro, and Gaara didn't show up right away. They showed up when the Leaf Genin were heavily struggling with their opponents, right? Kiba was moments away from death. Shikamaru was moments away from death. Rock Lee was moments away from death. That's when then they showed up, right? They're not gonna show up right away, right? We could presuppose that the distance is different, but they certainly wouldn't show up right away. So Kidomaru wouldn't need much time. None of those guys are on his level. At best, if we give the Genin the benefit of the doubt, Naruto goes on a rampage because he can't handle Kidomaru, and Kidomaru has a tough time against that. Once Naruto gets to 1-2 tails, Kidomaru's going to fall. Right, so that's what would happen at best. It wouldn't simply be, oh, they would hold off until the Sand Genin appear. No. Kidomaru is vastly superior to everyone, including the Sound 4. He would dispose of probably the others. Naruto would probably be the last one standing, and Naruto would see the death of his comrades before his very eyes and rampage. Go to 1 tail, 2 tail, 3 tail. And that would be a huge problem. That would be a huge problem, right? So then he most likely would kill Kidomaru with anything more than 2 tails, I'd say. He would certainly kill him. And the other Sound 4 would be exterminated as well. So that would be a sight to behold. That would be very problematic, right? And simply put, who knows what happens after that? Naruto would lose control. Right, Naruto wouldn't be in his right mind anymore, like he wasn't against Orochimaru during early Shippuden. Right, so that's what most likely would happen. Daigo doesn't really give Kidomaru the benefit of the doubt for the most part on how powerful he truly is. He would dispose of the Genin like lambs to the slaughter. He's vastly superior, vastly. It would take a rampaging Naruto to turn the tides of the battle. That's what would have to take place. And I don't know if Naruto would go after Sasuke at that point. If he's rampaging and there's no one to stop him, that could be a huge problem. It would take a very, very high caliber individual, someone like Jiraiya, someone like that, to get to his seal. Yamato would have to be called out to come down to the location that Naruto's at to close that seal, and hopefully he's not too late. Hopefully he's not too late. Or Minato would have to do what he did in the Pain arc in Naruto's subconscious and get him to calm down. Right, that's probably what would have to happen. I don't think Yamato would get there in time to close the seal and make Naruto calm down. I think Minato would have to go into his subconscious and do what he did in the Pain arc when Naruto had 6, 7 tails emerging, right? I believe it went up to 8 when Pain had him in the Chibaku Tensei. Minato would have to come out. That's the only way he'd be stopped. Right, so that's what most likely would happen to me. The Sand Genin wouldn't get there right away. Not in time to stop Kimimaro from slaughtering the Genin that are trying to take Sasuke back. And that's just the reality of it. Now, if we do give the benefit of the doubt to the Leaf Genin and they do hold off and Nagara shows up, okay, then they have a good shot. Right? But I don't think that's likely because, again, the Sand Genin didn't show up until the Leaf Genin were nearly exterminated by the members of the Sound 4 that they combated. And Kimimaro. That's when the Sand Genin showed up. It was very last minute. All right, so that's my take on that what if scenario. But yeah, this is a very interesting topic, and obviously the biggest problem is a lot of the inconclusive factors that we can't objectively conclude on. Right? How much more powerful is Shino now? How would he do against each of the Sound 4 most likely? What is the discrepancy in power between Shino and each of the Sound 4, etc. Right? It's quite tough to gauge this, but it's still interesting nonetheless to discuss it. Clearly, these are all theoretical and falsifiable. You could come with some rational thought and try to come up to your own conclusion, and it's probably a good one to utilize as well. But that's going to wrap it up, folks. That's my thoughts on the video. It was definitely an interesting video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you think it would go different if he replaced Kiba, or if he simply joined the original team to add one more man? You guys let me know in the comment section below. But that's going to wrap it up, and I'll catch you in the next one. This is Jay the Great signing out. Peace.